morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m. Welcome to the May 20th, 2020 Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee meeting. In order to abide by Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order for social distancing during the pandemic, the district is holding this meeting via remote session. I'd like to thank everybody who's joining us via Zoom. We value and want to hear everybody's comments and remind you that to make a comment during the appropriate public comment period time, to use the raise hand feature on the Zoom web app, or if you're joining us on the phone, please dial *9. This will inform us that you'd like to make a comment and we can unmute you into the meeting. Please don't raise your hand until the topic you would like to discuss is being discussed. In addition, your patience is appreciated as there is a slight delay as we switch from one speaker to another. So with that housekeeping over, I'd like to start with introductions. I'm Chip Close. I'm the Water Operations Manager with the district. And 6 feet to my right is
Chris Beerwagen, District 2 Director, Division 2 Director.
Scott Miller, Division 3 Director.
Kean Summers, Hydroelectric Manager. Rem Scherzinger, General Manager.
All right, thank you. We will move forward with public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to comment on items that are not related to the Combie South Access Road, the plan for water, or water supply update?
No one's raising their hand.
All right, seeing no hands raised, we will move on to the approval, hopefully the approval of the minutes from the March 18th meeting. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
None? Look at the meeting.
Fine.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. We will check those in. And then we will move on to item number 2, which is the Combie South Access Road. And for that, it's my pleasure to pass it to Kean Summers.
Excellent, thanks, Chip. Kean Summers, Hydroelectric Manager. Chris, if you could pull that up and we can walk through it. Am I controlling this one, Chris?
Yeah.
I apologize.
And I'll just follow you.
I don't have the remote.
Right behind you.
All right, so I'd like to...
It's strange having a director's face up there. In Brown Act, I'm not supposed to make eye contact. So when I look at the screen and there's somebody's face in there who's a third board member, it makes me uncomfortable for Brown Act reasons.
Okay.
So I don't know what picture has to be up there.
Chris, can you put the picture of me, that thing that you did, the avatar or whatever, up so it's not my face?
Whatsoever.
Don't know if I can do that during the meeting, but I will try.
If nothing else, we'll just have to
Yeah.
close the video down, Ricky. Okay.
Not during the share screen. Sorry.
Well, Chris is working on that. I'll quickly walk us through the presentation here and a little background on this job. This has been to the WHO committee several times, so I'm going to move fairly quickly through this. So if there's any questions, please feel free to stop me. So first of all, the Combie South Powerhouse is located on a piece of district property near the Van Giesen Combie Dam in this area here. The road serving it, the road that we're trying to get here serves both the powerhouse and the dam. And so why are we here? What's the history behind this whole thing? Following 9/11, the attacks brought increased attention, to say the least, to security and emergency access to critical energy infrastructure, the dam and the powerhouse both being critical infrastructure. The Orville Dam incident here several years back illustrated the need for improved access, and so we reached out to a couple of different agencies. We reached out to the FBI, we talked to FERC, we talked to the Placer County Sheriff, and then we brought in our own independent security consultant and asked for some direction on what we need to do here. And bottom line is that the consultant found that we needed to improve access, and all parties out there agreed. What's the problem with the current access out there? So first of all, we have a number of parcels that we cross, and a number of private gates that you have to get through. It takes approximately 15 to 20 minutes to get from the first gate here down to the powerhouse. So the response to this area is significantly delayed. Just some pictures of the gates here. You have to get out and open and then close each one of them. Some of the homeowners out there have animals that need to stay within inside the fence, so you can't leave them open for the car behind you. Every vehicle passes through, opens and closes the gate. The problem, why can't we just improve it on the existing location? Our easements out there state specifically, the easements are over the existing roadway as it exists on the ground. That is the language. It doesn't call out a width, it doesn't call out what we can do out there. Essentially, we have the right to use the road as it exists. So that means that any improvements would require new easements from multiple owners. Several years ago, so this is just some pictures of the work that needs to go on here. This is one of the sections of the road. You can see that it's deeply rutted. We would need to come in here and add some drainage along the side of the road, widen that road, pave that road. We're talking about bringing large vehicles in and out of here. This is not just your normal four-wheel drive pickup truck. This would be a concrete truck. This would be a crane to lift anything in and out of there. So this road is just not cutting it. In addition, when we do go out and dress up some of the areas, like the ruts in the road here, since there is no drainage, it's washed away fairly quickly, and we end up in the same situation that we're in now. In 2017, we contracted with Nevada City Engineering and had them come up with a couple of different alternative routes. Route 1 is the existing route, the longer route. Kind of tough not to be able to point on the Zoom screen, so I'll have to be a little bit more descriptive as to what I'm talking about here. Alternative 1 is the route that goes, the existing road that goes on the left-hand side of the map here. Alternative 2, which is the route that the consultants preferred at that time, is the one in the middle, and then alternative 3 is the route on the right-hand side. And then at that time, they also considered alternative 4, which is this tenderfoot lane extension, but that really didn't work out. The WHO committee directed staff to go back and develop costs and preliminary designs for routes 1, 2, and 3. So we came back to the committee with that. All of the alternatives were constructed or designed with the California 2016 Fire Safe Driveway Standard. We wanted to make sure that we had a standard that we can point to. Again, this is all in your package, but this is what the consultant was told to make this road do. When they came back, alternative 1, the upgrade to the existing access road, came in at $406,000. A lot of that was in right-of-way costs. We made some assumptions about how many right-of-ways we're going to have to do, how we're going to get that right-of-way, and what we need to do moving forward. Alternative 2 was the shortest route and the least expensive route. Alternative 3, you can see the costs here, and then alternative 3 was a new kind of pioneered-in road that we laid out just to make sure we had a couple of different options. And again, you can see all this in the presentation here, and we've gone through it several times in the committee meetings. Just kind of a summary of the various costs here. So those are the alternatives that we considered as we move through these things. We won't go to questions quite yet. We'll just leave that table up there for now. In March of 2019, we brought this back to the WHO committee. A number of members, a number of residents out there indicated that they would prefer alternative 1 since it was in the existing route. At that time, the committee asked us to reach out to the landowners on the alternative route to see if they'd be willing to donate easements to the district. That was what they indicated that there would be some willingness to do during the public meeting. In April of this year, we sent out a letter to the property owners, essentially requesting that they donate the land. We said that if you're not interested in donating the land, you don't need to do anything, but please let us know if you are. We received one positive letter back that said that they would be willing to donate, two negative responses, and then 3 no responses, which we're interpreting as a unwillingness to donate. I did want to make one quick comment on Thursday, late last week. One of the residents provided an alternative suggested route going through there, so I wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of that. that. Essentially what would happen is that traffic would come down to the end of the existing road. They're asking that the cul-de-sac there essentially be built. Traffic would do a 180-degree turn, and then come back down the Arroyo driveway. On a staff level, that's problematic for a number of reasons. It's a significant take through one of the property owner's parcels there, the Arroyo property. Widening out that cul-de-sac would be fairly expensive. I think that there'd be a number of trees that would need to be taken out. We obviously, given the timeline that it came in on, haven't had a chance to lay out any sort of preliminary developments or come up with any cost estimates, but on a high level, I expect that it would be similar in cost to Route 3. The impacts could be more dramatic.
Could you elaborate just a little bit on what the benefit of doing that without a picture of what that looks like? It's confusing, but what is the justification for that idea?
I believe the property owner that suggested is on the call. I believe that he believes that it would help improve the access for the neighborhood. It would improve fire safety for the neighborhood. So they see it as a benefit to the overall neighborhood. I don't know that it provides much benefit to the district in that location.
And historically, my other question is back to the history. I'm not assuming, we have a prescriptive right for the current access, not a right of way already, is it right?
It's slightly better than a prescriptive right.
So I assume it's historic road. Did ID build it? Did the landowners build it? Property owners, nobody knows, just a road that went down to the power.
It was likely built for the powerhouse or the dam, but I can't say that for sure.
But remember that the powerhouse was a private construction. We didn't build it.
The powerhouse was. How about the dam when it was built?
We built that.
Yeah.
So the powerhouse people had to use this road to get there.
No,
Assuming.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
because there's an NID road on our property,
Right.
so
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the reason we're here at the committee today is to bring back the information that we reached out and asked the neighbors if they would be willing to donate the right-of-way to try and bring the cost of alternative one down to the point where it's competitive with the other alternatives. The neighborhood doesn't have interest in that, and I think that's clear from their response to our request, and get some guidance. Staff needs to move forward with a road. We're not, all three of these routes will work for our purposes, but we need committee's guidance at this point as to which route we need to pursue, and so we can get this road, the final design done, and make construction happen out there. We need to get this road in place. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to open it up to the committee with questions.
I just have a comment then about, I was on the committee, that's almost a year ago. If I'm correct in my memory that this went that direction because of opposition to routes 2 and 3 that were presented, that if we got easements from them, donated, that would bring our costs down, and therefore we would participate in improving, upgrading Route 1. And at that time, I remember that Route 2 appeared to be the preferred one anyway. And so I'm in favor of going ahead, recommending that we adopt Route 2 and proceed with the project, yeah.
Route 2 incur eminent domain.
I think that eminent domain is a likely outcome of all of these routes.
Get into that with these roads.
Yeah, I think
Was there one or two? I think there was, I only remember one, but is there two? I think maybe there were two.
Route 1 cross, or excuse me,
Route
Route 2 crosses 2 parcels.
Two parcels that include having to acquire property.
Yes.
Can you go back to the lot map that shows where Route 2 runs?
Yeah, Chris, can you?
How does it affect anybody's parcel? Was it on the edge?
yeah.
you could step to the screen.
Yeah, you can kind of feel it,
So it impacts, it impacts the, again, the Knapp and Arroyo properties right here. It's the center route and runs down their property lines.
And that is a property line all the way to the river?
Correct.
I have a laser pointer. So where are you pointing?
So this is alternative two, is this middle one here, and it impacts this parcel here, the Knapp parcel, and the Arroyo parcel.
And then it goes on NID properties. that
Correct,
big-
yeah.
big block.
The big chunk here is NID property.
Yes.
Once we get onto there, we're through the property issues.
So, to zoom in on the Arroyo property, or whatever, it's down here at the beginning junction that you're saying.
Right.
Our infringement would be, I don't
Right.
understand how it's on their edge, or is it going right through the middle of the
No,
property?
so it's right, this is the property line right here, Scott.
All the way to the river?
Yeah, this corner right here is Knapp, so it's not usable. We come across that.
Well, nobody's living on that property?
Nobody's living on
They
this.
live on, not on that corner, their house is up on
Okay,
the left
so
hand
this
side of the road
is
there.
already an edge of the, okay.
Yeah, and then this is Arroyo, we come onto the corner and then we dive into our parcel.
And I'll go along with Chris's recommendation.
There are,
We would keep the, first alternative in the, on the shelf. If people suddenly decide they do want to, come around. I suspect your letter is not a declination that they didn't answer, but rather too busy to figure out what it was about. Were I to receive something like, oh, shoot, I don't know what to do it. And you put it aside on your desk to read later and you never read it, rather than a negative or a positive. But were we to start to pursue this direction and then people go, well, wait a minute, or they talk to their neighbors and everybody fires up and comes forward, we could always, don't know how far along you could carry that.
Yeah.
But, in fairness,
Well, I think the first thing we would do at this point is we would develop offers to Knapp and Arroyo
on this,
on this.
Preferred,
lot
yeah.
And begin negotiating with property owners.
yes,
Okay?
I concur.
the public is, there are
Yes.
property owners that would be
Yeah.
interested in commenting as well. I
So
assume.
we are at the point where we'll be accepting public comment on this topic, so if you're interested, please raise your hand on the web app or dial *9 and we'll call on you and unmute you.
So it's *9 to raise your hand?
*9 to raise your hand on the phone, correct? We'll give it a minute here, give people time to respond.
There we go. I'm sorry, I'm having issues. Give me a second. There we go. Got some folks now.
Okay.
Arroyo?
Okay.
Just a legit.
Arroyo?
We've unmuted the Arroyo line, if you'd like to go ahead and make your comment.
All right, you talked about infringement, on people's properties. However, if you guys all took a field trip and came down closely, I want to let you know you're right in front of my house. And you are infringing on, our rights to be living out here, in this nice, wonderful place. And once again, I reiterate that your trucks, your equipment will be right out my front window. And that is an infringement on, the number one alternative, you've already got access. And the number two is going to get washed away if, again, you take a field trip, come out here and see how far up the road you're going to have to go to make drainage. that alternative 2 is a waterway. It washes out, and there is like a nice little stream, that runs down that area. So again, as far as your costs go, I think the one that you have already is maybe bucked up a little bit, to make it look like the cheapest alternative is possible. However, if you had maintained that road, which you already have access to, people have been out here for years and you've been using it. As far as the gates go, that's pretty simple. Does it hurt for someone to get out of their truck? I don't think so. Would it be proper to notify the owners out there, saying, hey, we're going to be, using some equipment out here. Can you keep your dog in? That's all that they have over there. There's no other wildlife. Benefit them, say, hey, we're going to leave the gates open from 8 to 5 and keep your dog in the house. You already have the access. I don't understand. And you never said in the last meeting whether you were going to close that road. It was a, that's a thought. So really, how much more do you need, especially at this time that we're all going through? It's unnecessary. You've had progress.
Maintains that road?
Pardon me?
You mentioned the maintenance of the existing road. Is NID the only participant in road maintenance?
As far as I know, you're the only people that use it.
Oh, so the people that live there don't use it?
No, unless they walk out there and clear brush, because, we have a problem with clearing out here because it's not done by NID. So the property that you need, is a fire hazard. It needs to be brushed and cleared. And that's just for fire for us out here. I have cleaned that property over and over for 40 years. Because now it costs too much for insurance because you guys don't clear it. So, that, it's just, it's unfathomable that you need to spend that kind of money on developing something more. When what you have is possible, the owners have dealt with it for years. It's unnecessary, and they're all cooperative. Trust me. We all got letters from them. The last time we had the meeting, and those that couldn't attend because maybe elderly or had some health issues, we responded for them. And there was no negative. They all said, that road's fine. We've been living with it for years. The only issue, it sounds like, is that you guys just need to maintain it. Not, maybe twice a year. Not just once, not just every 3 years. Maintenance. I mean, you get your hair cut, right? You make appointments to do this, to do that. Making an appointment to keep that road where it's usable. And I'm sorry to say, but you take the pictures of that thing at the worst time. And you have no idea what it's going to look like out my window. You're right in front of my face. I didn't move out here for that. So that's my issue, gentlemen. Food for thought. So obviously you can see I oppose and think it's your responsibility to keep up what you've already had for years. As I said, the neighbors that live by that road do not have a problem.
Okay,
move to the next.
Presumably, we'd be able to enhance that road with the consent of the neighbors you're speaking for? And what's the red line to the right, to the east?
Alternative 3.
Okay, that takes it out of her front window. And if it is a drainage, that's just a property line, we could pick our own route on our property, correct?
That's the Cummings driveway at that point. It's a different driveway. Alternative 3 ended up,
No, I mean, I'm talking about as we go to the river from there.
once we get onto our property, there's an existing road on our property, that goes down.
Where is it?
It runs, it's not shown, it runs generally.
We go to the picture, it's on the picture.
Okay.
This handout here.
That one.
So you can see where alternative 2 comes off here. Once we jump onto our property here, this road exists. We'll have to widen it, right, so we are gonna bring it up to the fire driveway standards, so there need to be turnouts every couple hundred feet. So we will widen the existing road on our property, but this is approximately the park property line that runs through here. There are some encroachments onto the district property here that we'll have to deal with as well. This shed is on the district's property. This is the property line here, so this is the Knapp property, this is the Arroyo property, this is her house here.
Oh, she wasn't down at the junction, she's up there.
She's up there, yeah. So the,
Right where we come onto the property.
the curve on the road would be what she's talking about in my front yard.
And where's the drainage?
The drainage
Natural
runs
drainage.
along here and then makes its way down along the side of the road. The engineers have considered that. There may be some culverts and there will be some grading that needs to be done to ensure that drainage doesn't wipe out the new road, but, that was considered in the design.
So my question is, alternative 2 is already existing road. How does it connect currently down here at the, or does it?
To the Powerhouse Road or?
No, yes, to the powerhouse road.
Or to the main road here?
Right there, yeah.
So this is, you can see, we had a picture of that. Find my picture.
Arroyo's
This
Drive.
is what that road looks
Okay.
like now. So you can see this is the drainage, this is the culvert along the side of the, or the drain along the side of the road. This is the road where it jumps onto our property. You can see it kind of fade out there. It's gonna need to be improved. We'd like to pave it. We wouldn't want to create a bunch of dust in our front yard.
Where's her house? Is that a
Her
shed
house
in the
is
trees
over
there?
here. This is the Cummings property to the right, and that's the
Pump
shed
house?
on his property. I don't know what's in it.
And she's on the other side?
She's on the left side.
She's over here on the left.
Set back, so it's not back, but.
Yeah, this is the fence.
It's a phone number ending in 7068.
Oh, hello, can you hear me? This is Sid Brown commenting.
State your name.
My name is Sid Brown. I'm on a phone in a possibly poor connection, so I'll just keep this short. I do agree with the sentiments expressed by the previous caller. I believe that the option 1, the existing route, is the better one for NID as well as for the public as well as for the environment. I believe that there could be some maintenance activities that would enhance the usability of the road, and I think that is the one that NID should pursue.
Although we've been limited, it sounds like, from doing so. This is my first day looking at this, but it sounds like that's part of the problem, is they won't let us expand the road and improve it.
Correct.
Well, you know, the limit, excuse me for interrupting,
Well,
and I don't know.
factual.
One of the problems, of course, is, you know, determining what level of improvement is absolutely essential. I saw in the staff report the FBI, the sheriff, the recommendations. You know, there's plenty of suggestions of how to make it more accessible for larger vehicles on a regular basis. Again, I'm not sure that I agree with the necessity. It's not my call, but, you know, having the pullouts and having wide graded areas for ever larger equipment may not really be the top priority and the best way for NID to spend the money. That's my comment.
Thank you, Sid.
So
Sorry. Sorry.
We had one more caller.
Linnea Flanagan.
So, Linnea Flanagan, your line is unmuted.
Yes, it starts, there you go.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Tyrone Gorey, 3440 Cedar Springs. This issue, I've talked to Rem about access on the current existing Route 1. I talked to Rem quite a few years ago, and the issue of this this road came up in the FERC relicensing. And what is not stated in here that should be known is, and I don't know if NID's verified this information, but that existing road comes within a non-registered historical monument. The dam is considered the Gold Hill Dam, and in FERC relicensing, basically archaeologists and anthropologists that NID hired, Shelley Davis King, made a statement that that particular dam could be the oldest dam, first gold dam in Placer County. And so putting a paved road, asphalt road right next to that is pretty invasive and actually might be illegal. I don't know these as fact, but concerns for that. I do know that that road and the easement that you guys are asking for puts you within the 100-foot floodplain, which was also an issue. So those are just two legal things that are concerned that I have with Route 1. Second issue is they talk about grades, and we're talking, you guys are trying to meet a federal mandate, and it wasn't only just access for fire equipment is what my issue was before, but for basically construction equipment, boom trucks, rescue equipment, ladder trucks to be able to get down this road. So, you know, those turnouts were actually mandated. The curve that they talk about in Mr. Knapp's property in Route 1 is probably over 18%. And it has been a problem where the trucks have not been able to get around that corner. And so henceforth, when you guys did try to improve the road years ago and put in gravel, when you came to that road, you had to back down through my property, which is still remaining at 16%, through a rock area that you guys will have to blast those rocks out to make your easement. So the costs that they are showing might be there are probably going to be higher. Just as a thought. Another thing is the gate that you have there, the actual fire turnout is in that gate. And that means that gate's going to need to be much wider than it actually shows. So there's concerns of those two things. The other legal concern is the actual access. And in your letter on the recommendations for your consultant, the recommendations that they didn't put in there is something that I talked to the fire marshal of Placer County here at Meta Vista Fire District. And we've had a problem with this place being a turnaround. And the problem is like I built my house 6 years ago when I applied for my permit. And so 10 years ago, and they said that there was not a fire turnaround, or that NID didn't even actually have good fire access to the powerhouse. So Chris Paulus and Ian Gow, which would be CAL FIRE and Placer Hills Fire, made this recommendation years ago, and I actually told Rem about this in a site meeting that he had come out. So, and what happens is when a truck comes in, particularly your trucks, even a house to be built, you have to have 30 feet of fence access. Both Route 1 and Route 2 do not allow your usually 2 trucks to be able to access correctly. So every time you guys come, you guys are sitting out in Meta Vista Road, a public road, blocking that. Henceforth, too, with those access, you put a gate at those accesses, pretty soon somebody's parked in front of there. So we've had longstanding issues. When I saw the proposals, and Ms. Arroyo is correct, there is a water management issue at that junction of entrance of 1, not only an access issue. So what was talked about is that I had made a proposal that I had submitted, and I had redrawn the letter that you guys had, and it shows an alternative route. And I do have a lot of concerns for Mr. Cummings and Ms. Arroyo for their access and how close it comes to her property and to her front door. But if you take the current access of Route 1, you guys are actually closer to my view windows that you can see me standing, because my windows are actually only 2 feet tall, and so they are low. So you can see me standing nude if you want, and your workers have. And I am basically about, I have the legal amount. I built as close as I could based on the existing road to my house. Now, based off of variance that I had to comply with. And so now I'm built to this point, and your road to change it, I did this for a country view of the river. You're gonna put an asphalt road in front of me, and now closer to the house, because what also is true, Ms. Arroyo's comment is that road is within my 100 feet of dispensable space. And I had to clear about 8 trees in that existing easement to achieve my attainable defensible space, which allowed me to salvage my insurance, which was being canceled. And so I did all these things and met a whole bunch of standards. And at that time I had the fire chief and everybody out here. So I still have 2 trees standing that really are within my 100 foot of defensible space that haven't been cut down, even though I have salvaged my insurance. So there's a lot of issues, and she's worried about that house, the road coming close to her house. You guys will literally, I could spit or piss and almost hit the top of your trucks when you guys come as close as you are. And henceforth, your gates will be stopping right in front of my house, running engines, just like you guys have been running a jackhammer on the other side of the river for 3 months, before and after times that we're supposed to be allowed to do that. So the thing is the existing Route 2 should have been decided on a long time ago. That route is the most economical, was recommended before, has been on the map a long time ago, and the route of changing it slightly, making some property alignment adjustments, because we have some issues with property lines over there, and people have property over there, and hopefully NID can negotiate some property line adjustments and make one Meadow Vista Road end and create a fire turnaround, because your emergency trucks cannot legally, and that law in statement is not in your rules of mandate. That's excluded. That's actually a Placer County thing that you guys aren't meeting on your road designs. But the design I had submitted, I've talked to Mr. Knapp, I've talked to other people. It would service the county as a fire safe turnaround, would allow emergency trucks to access your road, and would not take it any closer than what is currently proposed in Route 2. If you would consider that the expense of what they say it might be, I do not believe would be. You are incurring maybe some property trading or acquisitions trade that could lower the cost, henceforth help pay for this route. Plus, if you put a cul-de-sac in this road, at the end of this road, and made a fire safe turnaround, you're basically allowing us and the responsibility of defending access to the old route. Because that is a security problem that is not stated. You're trying to secure this thing, because the problem I've always had with this Route 1 is it allows the public to access all these people's property and go to your dam and go to the swimming hole and go to the river through my property. So I've had to been to police all this time for the 12, 13 years I've owned this property for NID to manage this issue. I have guns pulled on me. I have dogs. You can check with Placer County. I have Sheriff's Department. I have multiple reports. I've tried to deal with the issue. So in your consideration, I think we should be able to actually assist the county and assist the community here with rectifying this road that we've had here, that we've had to have the problem of dealing with. Ms. Arroyo has people pulling on her road all the time and driving across easements, and Mr. Knapp, and we're stuck out there with people tearing down our trees and everything. If the proposals were done correctly and NID would have done their homework correctly, I'm kind of just appalled that we're here at this meeting, because you guys should have taken this route and made these property trade considerations as soon as you know that all these encroachments were there, and then take the comment about the water management thing and go ahead and build a culvert right across the easement that you're doing, and you'd alleviate everybody's issue. Thanks for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chris, do we have any other comments?
You want to ask one more time? Star 9.
All right, yeah, so we don't see any more comments, but if you'd like to hit star 9, we'll look for them. None? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Is there any other discussion the committee would like to have, or direction given?
I'm curious about a field trip at this place. See what it, the pictures aren't doing anything, any service. I have no idea where everybody's houses are. I hear all this. And I've never been out there, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, we have direction to go with 2. We're happy to take the committee members out of it.
Yeah, certainly make that happen.
So is there unanimous direction for 2 items?
Yes. And then we'll set up a field trip, so.
I suppose.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll close item number 2, and we will move to item number 3, Plan for Water Public Outreach Process Design Presentation. And for that, we'll be calling on Mr. Greg Jones, who is coming to the table as we speak. There are slides. I'll get it.
I'm looking for him here.
Number 2 on the right.
Got a minute.
Okay. Great, thank you. Members of the committee, public, staff, I'm Greg Jones, the Assistant General Manager. This morning, we will hear a presentation for the final public outreach process design for the Raw Water Master Plan update, or the plan, from the folks at Raftellus, Melissa Elliott and Patricia Tennyson, who are on the phone call, I believe, at the moment. After working for months with Raftellus, it is the recommendation of the staff and that this committee advance the public outreach process design to the full board of directors for consideration. A little bit of background before we start the presentation. NID has been in the process of updating the 2013 Raw Water Master Plan for some time. When complete, the plan will show how a variety of future water supply and demand scenarios will ensure that the community enjoys the same high-quality water reliability the system has now and it has for the past 100 years. In January 2019, the Board of Directors rejected the originally designed public outreach process. The WHO Committee took up and began the process of developing an alternative public engagement approach utilizing the American Water Works Association's M50 process. At the WHO Committee on February 2019, members of the committee, staff, and the public discussed opportunities and challenges in developing a public outreach process for the plan's update, and requested to hear from experts in the field. At the WHO Committee on March 2019, 2 public outreach experts discussed the public outreach options, experiences, and issues as it relates to the AWWA's M50 outreach process. That public outreach process recommendations include use of the International Association for Public Participation Principles, identifying risks and community needs, and determination of the types and extent of the public involvement that the Board of Directors would like to see. The committee decided to move forward with hiring a public involvement professional to design the outreach process for the plan's update. The WHO committee provided the initial scope, and the public engagement RFP was developed. The RFP considered initial outreach assumptions of 10 facilitated public meetings, inclusion of a third-party blue ribbon panel for technical review, and 8 months of facilitated public meetings. The RFP was distributed on May 28th, 2019, and it was sent to 25 firms and individuals. Raftellus, who we'll hear from in a moment, was selected for the project, and NID engaged in a consulting agreement with them on August 2019. Raftellus' team includes Melissa Elliott and Patricia Tennyson, both of whom presented their experience and expertise at the public outreach process on the March 2019 WHO committee. On January 15th of this year, 2020, Raftellus conducted a board workshop intended for the board to provide direction on key goals and critical success factors for the plan's process design. The workshop included discussion of, among other items, budget and schedule, stakeholder identification, outreach milestones, and public outreach success factors. Raftellus has since conducted a series of in-depth interviews with representatives of local community groups and individuals to listen to their questions, opinions, and issues related to the plan and their public outreach needs. As expected, Raftellus staff received a range of opinions and inputs in response to prepared questions, and those responses have been incorporated in the development of the outreach process design you'll hear about today. In addition to the interviews, Raftellus developed an online survey for a wider breadth of community input. That survey was conducted online from March 15th, 2020 to April 30th, 2020. The survey collected 487 responses. Of those, 320 were self-identified as NID water customers. Today, the committee will hear from Raftellus on the final public outreach process design for the plan for water. It is the recommendation of staff, again, that the committee advance this process to the Board of Directors for consideration. And with that, I'll welcome to the meeting Melissa Elliott and Patricia Tennyson of Raftellus to begin the presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Greg. I want to make sure you all can hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide and talk about our agenda for the presentation. Patsy Tennyson with Katz & Associates and I are going to tag team on this presentation a bit. The committee members have received the written recommended public outreach process about a week ago, and the agenda really does follow the sections listed in the process design. I'm going to begin with an overview of how we developed the process design, and then Patsy's going to discuss the community research and online survey we conducted earlier this year, and then I'll provide an overview of section 1, which is the foundational elements. Patsy will then talk to the communications strategy, and then I'll follow with sections 3, 4, and 5, which are the proposed engagement techniques, the evaluation plan, and finally the support elements. And given that this is an online meeting and we're joining you virtually, staff has asked us to provide the presentation in full and then take questions and discussion at the end. And following discussion, staff does have a recommendation for the committee to advance this process to the Board of Directors. So next slide. So very briefly, this was the approach we took. We actually started last fall, as Greg said, had our workshop, talked with you in January at a board workshop, did the community research in February where we interviewed 17 stakeholders, and then that online survey was just out. We've since been working on developing and presenting that recommended process design. And on the next slide, I'll have Patsy go through the community research.
We're unmuting you.
She is unmuted, she has to unmute on her end, star 6.
Patty, you have to unmute on your end. Star 6, Patty.
For none, Doug.
Start hitting the button.
Just turn on.
Patty, we still can't hear you.
Oh, she just muted herself again.
Try to
You
unmute.
might have to go into settings to enable your microphone. I've been in a lot of these Zooms.
Yeah.
If you're on an iPhone anyway.
It says she's unmuted.
Yeah,
Melissa,
that can happen.
can you maybe?
I will proceed. Yeah, no problem. So these are as you can see on your screen, these are the organizations from the 17 folks came from that we talked to. We did in-depth interviews there in Grass Valley. We had a member of our team there for 3 days. We were really grateful for how candid people were in sharing with us their experiences with NID and their thoughts on the plan for water.
There's only 13 on your screen.
Right. Sometimes we had more than one person from the actual organization. That's true. And so we really did try to. I'm sorry?
Melissa, maybe I can answer Director Miller's question. At a couple of these, there were 2 members of the public at a couple of these meetings. Well, they're not 17 individual organizations, they're 17 people representing 13 organizations.
Curious what you do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So a lot of what we learned here we'll go through in the communication strategies, but essentially, as you might guess, there is a lot of confusion and interest in Plan for Water, and also confusion about what it is, why it's necessary, what the end result will be, what the process might be. And so this really did lead us to believe that a extended communication strategy was necessary, and we'll go through that in just a moment. And on the next slide, on the online survey, we were really pleased with the responses we received. NID communication staff did put this out quite extensively through their own communication channels, and getting that many responses, especially during a time when people are really focused on other things right now, I think is really telling that there's a lot of interest in the community on this particular topic, and also on NID and their communication pieces. We were wanting to know, it was a very simple survey, but we were wanting to know about how community members were engaged with NID in the past, what their communication preferences were, their views on the importance of water issues in the community were very important to us. So it was about 7 questions, and had a really good range of responses that led us to develop some communication strategies. And on the next slide, so in the first section of the public process design, we lay out the foundational elements, and this is a list of the topics that are in that foundation piece. And we begin with an understanding of the scope and context of the Plan for Water, which will be very different in its approach than the former Raw Water Master Plan. It's going to reflect changes in water demand and supply and the potential effects of climate change. And the plan is a long-range planning effort that will produce an organizational tool to help guide NID's decisions related to its water system over the next 50 years. The plan's an integrated resource plan, meaning that it's comprehensive in its approach to water resource planning, and it incorporates the potential changes and trends in water supply and demand so that NID can be well prepared to adapt to future needs and challenges. And the range of potential demands and supplies will be projected and will factor in land use policies, population growth, and demand projections, regulatory requirements, climate change impacts, and other future conditions. And this is being all done through the AWWA M50 manual, that's kind of the guidelines for that. The forecast projections will establish a range of scenarios between demand and supply, and the plan itself will consist of a suite of future conditions. And these strategies will be evaluated to identify efficacy, implementation needs, community and other potential impacts, the order of magnitude costs, and triggering events. And a really critical element of the plan is that it does not include specifically selected or recommended strategies. Instead, it will provide a multitude of options that are presented for consideration and selection in the future. And the goal for the plan for water is to allow the board to have as many options to choose from as time progresses and triggering points are near. On the next slide, as we described in the community research we conducted, the plan for water has attracted interest from a broad cross-section of the community, both within the NID service area and from the region. And in developing a public process for the plan, we really needed to understand these stakeholder groups. So the groups you see listed here are just examples. We expect during the whole process, additional groups may come forward. But stakeholders, the term stakeholder means individuals or groups that are directly or indirectly affected by future water supply scenarios or strategies that the plan may consider, as well as those that have an interest in the plan or an ability to influence its outcomes. So there's going to be a significant focus on engaging NID customers and stakeholders that live within the service area and those that have expressed an interest in engaging. Participation in the engagement program will also be sought from special interest groups, advocacy stakeholders, agriculture, environmental, and business communities, as you see there. And on the next slide, after we understood our stakeholders, we wanted to document how NID will develop the plan. The plan's development process will be governed by two basic tenets. There's a policy level direction and technical support. And that policy level direction is set by the NID Board of Directors. And technical support encompasses all the technical data, tools, and analyses needed to inform and assist the board in setting the policy direction. And as NID develops the plan, there's going to be three areas that support those two tenets. One is specific board policy questions and planning goals and objectives that serve really as that foundation for the technical work. The next is the technical analyses to assess risks, investigate water supply scenarios, and develop feasible water supply and demand management strategies, and expert technical review. And then, of course, third is that external stakeholder discussion that informs both the technical and the policy analysis. And in development of the technical analyses, NID will convene a technical expert panel composed of subject matter experts in hydrologic and climate change modeling, hydraulic modeling, and demand forecasting. And that expert technical panel will review the technical analysis methods and results, and they're going to provide feedback on whether additional analysis is needed. So on the next slide, once we understood the context for the plan for water, we wanted to talk about timing. And we needed to understand the schedule NID is going to undertake to develop the plan. And that is done so that we can overlay that public process onto the schedule and make sure that we're informing the plan's development at the right time. So the development and adoption of the plan are going to occur over 3 phases. From start to finish, NID anticipates it will take 21 months. So almost 2 years in that process. And the public process design is separate from the technical work, and it's tailored for each phase. So let me just walk you through these phases. Phase 1, months 1 through 11, in the technical work, there'll be a lot of data analysis on hydrology and supply and demand. There's an American River Basin study data analysis. And of course, that expert technical panel will be reviewing all of that. What we'll be doing in the public process during that time is really raising awareness and understanding about NID itself, the services NID provides, and the plan for water. And that's to address that concern that was expressed during our interviews and in the survey that folks don't really know what this thing is. And we want to make sure we're all on the same page before we start really engaging people and informing the plan for water. In the second phase, months 12 through 18, the technical work is really centered around a series of workshops. There's 5 different workshops on demand, hydrology, supply. There's a problem statement workshop, and then there's a strategies workshop to address those problem statements. And that's when we're really going to engage our stakeholders and our community members in that planning process. Their input and their feedback will help us inform those those scenario designs, and they'll also help inform the water resource and demand management strategies that will be developed. The third and final phase is focused on readying that plan, getting it draft and final so that the board of directors can adopt it. And the public process there is to review the draft plan for water. It'll be presented to them. And then they'll also see the results of all the public process in preparation for that board adoption that's anticipated to happen in month 21. On the next slide.
The definition of a workshop and the
Yes,
cost.
I will absolutely get to that. There's a section on that. You bet.
That whole section of workshops.
Next slide. Also foundationally, it's critical that we think about how feedback is going to be used. So if we're going to ask the community and stakeholders to give us feedback, you know, they want to know how it's going to be used. We also want to know how it's going to be used. So during the engagement process, used to inform that scenario development and the development of water supply and demand management strategies, a vital part of this is going to be closing the loop and reporting back to those who were engaged, as well as the broader community, about what feedback was received and how it was used. And during the completion of phase 1 and phase 2 of engagement, the input gathered will be analyzed. A public engagement summary report will be developed at the end of phases 1, 2, and 3, and those reports will be made available at planforwater.org, the website for the project. And on the next slide is the communications strategy. And let me just pause real quickly and see if Patsy's been able to join us on audio, because she was going to cover this slide. Doesn't sound like it. So I'll keep pushing forward here. So the communication strategy, you'll remember in the research piece, we heard a lot of just unknowns. People weren't sure. What is it that NID, what is it they do? Who is NID? How are they involved in the community? And then also on Plan for Water, what is this thing and how will we be involved and what the process is? So the first off, we wanted to develop a communication strategy for each phase. And that will be dictated. Phase 1, we're going to be communicating very clearly to describe and raise awareness, because we want to make sure when we get to phase 2, when we're really engaging in the workshops, that people are aware, we're all on the same page, and people in the community are really prepared to give us the type of information and input that'll be very helpful in developing the plan. So in this first phase, we're going to be associating NID and its service and its role in the community, kind of laying that foundation. This will follow a lot through the communications plan you have and are developing for NID itself right now. You'll be increasing the amount of communication coming from NID. We heard a lot from stakeholders that they'd like to hear more from NID. And then, of course, working to understand what the Plan for Water is and what its purpose is and how it will be used. And then in phase 2, we'll be communicating to build a real much deeper understanding of water supply and demand issues so that our stakeholders can give us good feedback. So we'll be building understanding about water supply planning data, understanding the impacts of climate change. So we'll be taking all that data analysis that was done in that first phase and really getting it out to the public so that they can understand it and work with it a little bit to give us information. And in the third phase, again, we're working toward moving that plan to the board adoption, and we will be communicating about here's what the draft is, here's how you can review it, here's how you can provide comments, and we want to make sure people really understand what the adoption process looks like at that point. So on the next slide, and I promise we will get to the workshops that come into phase 2, but this is really the techniques, like how are we going to actually engage the community? And this is kind of the meat of the plan. These are the activities that NID would be doing in the community and with stakeholders. And there's a variety of these. We tried to put together the most robust plan we could with the budget in mind that you had. And there's a long range of communication channels that are going to need to be established to provide information and updates and enable members of the public to really give feedback to NID. And in our first part of phase 1, months 1 through 4, frankly, we've got to get ready to do this. And so we're calling that getting ready. And we'll spend the first 4 months there really thinking about what are the materials, what are the systems that need to be in place so that we can truly engage the public. And in these months, we have suggested that NID develop a display that can be used at events. When it's not at events, it can be in your lobby area. We noted from survey results that you do have quite a few people come in during normal times to check in with you and chat with staff. We'll be developing a community presentation. We've suggested that anyone providing presentations do some training so that they are very comfortable answering questions, they know how to take comments from those that they're presenting to and get them into a comment management system that needs to be developed. There's an FAQ document that's anticipated to be developed. We've suggested an electronic newsletter specific to Plan for Water so people can get updates throughout this 21-month process on anything that's happening. All that gets posted up on your planforwater.org site. We've anticipated a white paper that will be helpful in understanding the process for those that really want to dive into that. We can use your bills to do bill inserts, a fact sheet. We would hope that NID would identify one of their staff members as the central information contact that can really own this. One of the key things we also heard from stakeholders is we want to know who to go to with questions, so we'd identify that person. And then a glossary is often very helpful in these techniques. So, you know, when you're using lots of technical terms, understanding what those terms mean to everybody in the room and everybody reviewing documents can be very helpful. And of course, you already have the planforwater.org site, so it would be getting this website really updated, get all the materials on there and getting it ready to go. And on the next slide, once we have all those materials done in month 5, so for the next 6 months, is really communication. It's getting out in the public, talking to people about NID and also talking to them about the Plan for Water. So we have recommended what are called pop-up sessions where you go where people already are. Maybe that's a farmer's market. Maybe that is a storefront where people tend to be. It's a library, it's an event that's happening in the community, and that will all be outlined. Social media is a portion of this, and that was identified in your communications plan as well to kind of boost that. Of course, meetings with stakeholder groups, giving a presentation to the chamber or to the Farm Bureau, and being able to answer questions. And those comments and feedback all go into your comment management system. We can use your bill messages. And then one suggestion we had is to go ahead and start the tours of the water system when it's seasonally appropriate to do so, so that community members can see the water supply challenges that NID is attempting to address. And then on the next slide, we have phase 2. And remember, the goal here is to really engage our stakeholders and community members in the planning process as we're developing the scenario designs and identifying water resource and demand management strategies. So again, we're going to take a couple months and get stuff together so we're all prepared to do that. We want to update a lot of the material we did in the first phase, that presentation. We're going to redo the training, get the FAQ document updated. You know, we need to update this because you'll have a lot of information coming from those technical groups that we didn't have at the start, right? So we want to make sure all that's there. And we need to develop, in addition to that, some new material. The survey results show that while a lot of your community members get good information from reading about things, some are very visual learners, and infographics can really help us explain technical information. We'll want to develop discussion guides for the facilitated workshops so that we're very clear on what kind of questions we're asking and what kind of input we want. And then all the materials for these sessions that are coming up. And on the next slide. So got all that material ready. And again, we're going to launch in phase 2. So promotion and advertising is going to be happening. We want people to really know that this is happening and to engage with us. So you're going to continue doing your meetings with your stakeholder groups, just like you did in phase 1, but now you have more information to share with them. One thing before we have these workshops, where we're going to have individuals come in, work together on a half-day basis, work through problems with us on these various topics. It really does help if we orient them before you bring them in, because we want people to be informed, engaged, interested, and we want them to engage on what they're interested in, not slog through all of this if this isn't all. If they're a demand management guru and that's where they really like to live, that's what they should be involved in, and maybe the rest of this is not their cup of tea. So we want to provide an orientation session to review those public engagement efforts that are going to come and how it will work, so people are very prepared, where they can get materials, and we can answer questions during that session. Also, throughout all of phase 2, we have recommended an online engagement on your planforwater.org site, so that much like what we're doing here, people can watch a video, they can react to a survey, they can engage with you where it's convenient for them, if coming to a session is not appropriate for them. And then about 2 weeks before each of the 5 workshops, we'd like to have a drop-in session. And you can think of these set up a little bit like an open house, where you'd have stations for several hours in an evening, where, let's say the topic is on demand and we're preparing for the demand workshop. And then each of the stations would be there with technical experts. People can gather materials, they can ask some questions in advance, they can again get an understanding of what the workshop's going to entail, and really be oriented and ready to work when we get to those workshops. So we would have 5 of those drop-in sessions about 2 weeks before the workshops. Then you've got your workshops, and this is where that technical information is going to be presented. There's going to be questions, there'll be a facilitator on site. I would anticipate we would develop this so that people are working in small round tables. We would ask people to register in advance. We make sure we have enough materials and space for them, and that we're planning to have them there for a half day, working with us to really inform each of these workshops as we go forward. And on the next slide, we're moving into phase 3. So we've got all this data from our stakeholders in our community out of phase 2, and we're starting now to put that into place as we develop the draft and final plan for water. And we're calling this stage kind of the ready for public review, right? So again, we're going to take a moment to update everything. We've got a presentation, we've got training. All those documents, again, need to be updated because we know more now that we've been through phase 2. And we anticipate a couple of sessions as well in this phase, so we'll need to develop the materials for that. And on next slide, this last phase, we're going to be using all of the communication channels we've had so far, promotion and advertising. And what we're promoting is, hey, we have a draft plan for water that's coming out, and we want to make sure you're aware of it. And if you'd like to provide comments on it, that you have a way to do that. We anticipate doing what's called an availability session. And this is a little bit also like an open house, but it's for a longer period of time, where people can just drop in. So typically when we do these, we set up, one afternoon and evening during the week, maybe like a Thursday for about 6 to 8 hours. People can come by, the technical experts are there. They'll have had access to the draft plan. They can answer questions that the technical experts can answer questions they might have. You can provide your comments at that time in written format. So we do usually 2 to make it very convenient for people. The second one might be on a Saturday. So people can, drop by after errands as they're moving forward. Of course, we'll continue the online engagement on Plan for Water. And then this is all leading up to your Board of Directors public meeting to consider the final Plan for Water adoption. And then on the next slide, the 4th section of the public process design is how do we know we did a good job on public process, right? So this is how we'll evaluate. Each phase has evaluation metrics in it. So phase 1, where we're trying to really raise awareness, we want to see good community understanding and awareness of what the plan is as measured through a survey. We want people to have good recall about, yeah, I saw Clan Communications. I saw a Facebook post. I saw NID employees at a meeting. And then, you know, throughout all of this, we want to make sure that we are really identifying and adjusting so that when we get to the end of this, we're not, no new issues are popping up. So in phase 2, we want to see lots of strong engagement. We want informed comments during the public engagement where we can tell people have really, you know, been following the process, that they understand how to make comments, and that we're getting minimal suggestions by the public for improvements in the engagement approach. And then finally, in phase 3, you know, if we get through 21 months of this and a brand new issue shows up at your board meeting, typically boards really, really don't like that. So we want to make sure any new issues popping up throughout this we're dealing with and working through. And, you know, of course, we would love to see a no significant criticism of the engagement approach. No engagement approach is perfect, so there'll probably be a little bit, but we really feel like this would be a robust approach for NID. And on the next slide are the support elements that are included in the process design. You know, implementing this requires some basic things to be in place. So we spent some time describing the assigned roles and responsibilities, a comment management and response plan, and also a budget estimate. And so the public process design, that description of roles and responsibility really breaks down for NID where your staff would be involving and leading, and where a consultant would be supporting staff or perhaps leading, such as facilitating an engagement. The collecting and compiling of input for use in the development of the plan includes 3 main tasks: comment management, which is managing the various comments that are submitted regardless of the format; content analysis, so that we're assessing what the comments actually say; and then comment responses and determining how NID would respond to the comments. And we've recommended that before any information is collected, that a system be in place to manage it and analyze it. And there's many comment management tools available, ranging from really sophisticated software to, you know, common databases and spreadsheets are what folks use. And then the budget estimate was developed to align with the identified consultant needs within the public process design. The costs are including project management, communication strategy and support, facilitation, and also graphic design. And then I just want to stress, at a $300,000 budget, which was what we were asked to do, this public process design does rely heavily on NID staff resources to support all the elements, including participating and staffing in the meetings with the public, which frankly is a best practice as well. You know, you can only grow trust with the public when they see and hear from you directly, and not just from your consultants. So that would probably be anticipated anyway. And with that, that concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions or
If you have any question of the workshop, could you please define and
She went through.
oh, you're all right with that?
She had her budgets there. We had under phase 2 and phase 3, it included the training, but assumed their participation.
Okay.
Didn't want it to be an open-ended, right?
Yeah.
The budget showed under phase 2 and phase 3 that, 71,036, whatever it was there.
Yep.
2 different places. Phase 2 training, meeting design, facilitation, 71 grand, and phase 3 looked like another 25 grand, right?
Yep.
That's where my question.
yes, that's what the budget was. Yes.
You said it would be in the, and you were.
All right.
My 2 questions. First off, thank you, Melissa. This is Director Beerwag, and I knew it, having never gone through this, this is frankly a little overwhelming, but I think that's a good thing from the standpoint of detail. So on that, with that said, looking forward to doing this, and having not done this before, I have a couple of questions. I think they've sort of been answered already. One, it shows in the phases where NID staff, and then the next line say consultant assist. I assume that the consultant, we will hire a consultant that will be paid for out of this budget. Is that correct, the listed budget?
That is my understanding, that should you want to move forward with this as your process design, that NID will bid this project out.
Do a consultant, then that, but those, my question is, those dollars would come out of this budget that you.
Yes, the budget is specific to consultants. It does not include staff time.
Perfect. The other one is, how do you see, or do you see the board being involved in the staff and all these outreaches and all that stuff as included as part of the staff or separate? Because the board is never mentioned in that. I'm not looking for a job, but I want to just clarify what you think.
Yes, well, of course, you need to be very careful with Brown Act and notifications and so forth. So we would want to follow all legal requirements on that. But typically, when I've done these before, boards are very interested in at least observing different elements. Board members are, and I assume there would be reports and a status of the project coming to you at your regular board meetings as well. After each phase, we anticipate that there would be a summary report of all of the comments received to date and how we have been engaging and how we're doing in the evaluation plan, and that would be provided to you as well. Typically, we don't see board members presenting. We don't, typically see all 5 of you together, and that is frankly because of the legal requirements and in the Brown Act pieces, unless you wanted to notice it. But there's some flexibility there. If you are a board that wants to be more engaged, that can be developed.
Thank you. That's huge clarification. My other question is, who selects the TEC? Is the NID staff or the consultants, or how does that work? The TETAC, whichever.
The advisory group.
Yes. How's that process?
That was coming from an internal process of leading experts in the field for demand, supply, hydrology, expertise. So from academia, that group has not been clearly defined at the moment, but it would be an internal discussion point. And we would develop it along with the consultants who are hired to develop and implement this process.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Public.
So we will be opening up for public comment. So if you'd like to discuss this item, please raise your hand by dialing *9. All right, Peter, you're on. Can you hear us?
You need to unmute on his end.
Peter? You're muted on your side, Peter. *6 to unmute.
Is that better?
There you go.
Better. Sorry about that. Thank you for the presentation. It's quite comprehensive and appreciated. There is a list of community contacts and groups. I think there are 11 of them early on.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be individuals, I guess, and there's subsets of those. That's going to be a rather large group. But my question is, will people within those groups be self-identifying, or will they be selected by the team, whoever's doing the presentations and doing the next phase?
We anticipate that really this process is open to anyone, right? So there's no formal invitation that will go to specific individuals. We do throughout the process anticipate doing what we call stakeholder group meetings. Within those, that list of entities that are example stakeholder groups, for example, we list agriculture. So I know NID has a relationship, for example, with the Chamber of Commerce or with Farm Bureau. And so the idea would be to go to meetings that are already being held during this time period to inform those individuals and, do a presentation, answer any questions. So that would be happening. And then the workshops itself and the sessions are really open to anyone who would like to self-identify as being engaged. And so, Peter, the idea being that we're communicating and we are very much out in the community talking about this, so that hopefully most people at the end of this 21 months, it would be surprising if they said, I've never heard anything about that, right? So we want to invite as much participation as people are comfortable with and give them settings where they can do that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was the question, and I appreciate the answer.
Thank you. Great. Anyone else to comment? Okay. All right, hearing and seeing none. We have a recommendation.
Oh, let me just raise the
Oh,
hand.
we have a late comer.
Ending in 7068.
7068 would be Sid Brown.
I should recognize her number.
If you can hear me, I
Yes.
have moved to a better phone line, I suppose. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate the presentation. I look forward to being involved in the process. And in particular, I am interested in the proposal of the technical expert panel and who will choose that. I did think I heard Chris Bierwagen ask about that, but I did not hear clearly how that technical expert panel would be formed.
So Sid, this is Greg Jones. That expert panel is going to be formed, still to be determined, with the consultant as assistant, the implementation consultant, along with NID staff, and there will be academia, experts in the field of demand, supply, hydrology fields, and that is how those groups are going to be determined.
I would like to interject that local knowledge would be critically important as a part of the expert qualifications. And also the list in the report talks about these specialties specifically toward modeling. And again, actual local knowledge is going to be really key for understanding what's happening here in Nevada County and in NID's service area.
Okay. Who are you advocating for when you say that?
Not a particular person, but I am interested in how that expertise is going to be selected for, but I did not see any specific local knowledge called out. And it also, I'm very concerned that I didn't see anything in particular about other agencies and resource agencies in California and in our area. So maybe that was included in regional government, but I think of Fish and Wildlife, Forestry, U.S. Geological Survey, like that. Would like to make sure that they are considered and supported to participate in this plan.
Do you consider them local or regional, and or both?
Well, I guess it depends who we're talking about. So,
Well, you're making
comprehensive.
recommendations. Make it specific.
That's right. Well, this is the plan, so I'm just trying to input it this time.
No example of what a local input local input would be to make it easier for everybody.
Well, no, I was just those are two different things. Regional knowledge, absolute critical knowledge of this area, as opposed to, somebody from Pennsylvania maybe or something.
An example of said entity would be who?
Louise Jackson, perhaps? This is just coming from me, but I'm just saying someone who is a California and Northern California based person who knows about long-term hydrology in the in the region. So I don't want to get into a debate about this. I just felt that specifying local knowledge as well as academic, hydrologic, geologic, watershed, those are all very important things to do, but I just didn't see anything in the plan that specified local knowledge. That's a separate thing.
Can you give us that name again that you, Jackson? Okay. Just real quick to answer the other question regarding the Fish and Wildlife as stakeholder engagements. I believe we've covered that in the last 2 meetings over the period of time, and they are our regulatory environment. They certainly are potentially affected by the plan that comes out after the future, but they're on the regulatory aspect and not necessarily the stakeholder engagement process. So we have had that conversation, I know, at the WHO committees, and not sure if you were there at some of them, but that was the determination as we looked at stakeholder groups. Those Fish and Wildlife, the Water Board, they are our regulatory partners. So that's how we're categorizing those groups.
If I may, I would submit that I understand that and I appreciate that, but most of those agencies also have technical land management expertise that may not be directly tied to the regulatory role. And so I would, coming from a resource agency myself, with parks, we were not regulatory, but we had land management expertise. I know Fish and Wildlife also does forestry and fire protection. So it's not all regulatory, even though you're an agency maybe under CEQA who could be responsible or whatever, you still have, it's a pool of expertise that I would hope that NID would not limit itself from looking into. That's all. Do you understand my point here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. The next participant who has been unmuted is Louise Jackson.
Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Great. Okay, well, Sid mentioned my name, and I'm not sure that, this isn't at all about being on that panel, but I wanted to just mention about the type of people who you might want to have on it. For example, academics who don't necessarily live in the area, but they've done modeling in our area, like in the Yuba and American watersheds, like Roger Bales at UC Merced. I also want to back up Sid's statement that there are people at these research agencies that are just totally on the ground and really know a lot of the issues. And I really loved the outline of the plan that was put forth today, but I would also like to see something more about some of the externalities. For example, the workshops were very geared towards demand, supply, hydrology, but there's a lot of other things involved, like agriculture, ecosystem benefits, and maybe as this thing evolves, we can have more say in, as stakeholders, in how the workshops pan out, so that they're maybe more integrated, like maybe demand and supply could go together in a workshop. So just some ideas, and thanks so much. It's really appreciated to see this.
Thank you. All right, the next participant is Mr. John Norton. You've been unmuted.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough and I actually enjoyed it. One thing I just wanted to know was the workshops, the technical advisory committees, these activities, are there going to be minutes or recordings of those if somebody missed a meeting so that we could see what was concluded and drawn out at each meeting?
Yeah, John, we would.
Okay,
we would
good.
definitely have them recorded where possible and notes taken. I'm not sure what type of minutes. We haven't determined that, but we'd have information up on the website afterwards explaining who was there, what we talked about, what some of the discussion points were. I can assume that.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to participating.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
that's it for him.
computer in.
So, with that, no more public comment. We are looking for a recommendation to the board at this committee.
I'm in favor, and, once again, I want to thank, Melissa and Patsy, excellent job. I think this is right down the line of what we were requesting, and I'm really pleased with it, and look forward to moving on with the process. I'm in favor, recommending it to the board.
Is it open item, right? Open, yeah.
Oh, you betcha.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really does.
That, we will close item number 3 and move on to item number 4, the operations department activities and water supply update. Can I grab it? Thank you. Okay, we'll jump right into it. Start off with the district's precipitation levels to date. And what this graph shows, basically, the red line is what we are concentrating on. That is the current year's precipitation. And it hasn't been a gangbusters year by any means. You can see, however, though, that storms we've had the last few days gave us quite a boost, which was great. We had over 4 inches of precipitation at our Bowman Lake reporting station, which was great. But still, it only gets us to the drought levels.
Today's the 20th?
Yes.
It's through yesterday?
Through yesterday. We gained another quarter to half an inch overnight, but it wasn't
I'm
huge.
sure.
Yeah. So essentially what you see there is we're encroaching upon the levels we saw in the 2014-2015 drought, and any more storms may actually push us over that, which I would look forward to. But we are at 70% of average for this time of year. A little more depressing news actually is our snow survey, and that our May 1st snow survey came in at 58% of average with 16.1 inches of water content. So not great, not horrible, but not great. The bad news is that the 8 to 14 day outlook shows that we are at a 60 to 70% chance of being well above average temperature-wise in the coming 8 to 14 days. And then precipitation is 30% below average in the next 8 to 14 days.
What does that do to snow, melt runoff?
Well, it will.
Spill the reservoir.
Well, as far as the reservoirs go, we have closed all the gates, tried to capture as much as we could, and I'll get to that in the slide here in just a minute. We are doing our best to manage what's coming in from the recent round of storms, and we'll get to that here.
We're not spilling. That's the stuff.
It depends on what reservoir we talk about. On the Bear River arm, we are spilling some waters, but a lot of that is through PG&E's operations and not just natural storm runoff.
Dams.
Where?
So Combie is, we're generating power.
We're generating power, we're not
spilling.
spilling, we're just running.
Well, we're spilling as well. Yeah, no, we've got more water. We're making larger releases out of Rollins for power driven by PG&E, and then that spills in Combie.
So were there an interceding reservoir, we could recapture that and hold it? Or is it obliged to run over Combie?
No.
I mean, Combie has very little capacity,
Right.
so,
We would be strong.
Yeah.
so that power generation translates into how many acre feet for the month of, May 1st through May 20th? So far.
I don't have that number, but we can calculate.
Well, so if we're,
Or however, you might measure it, I just.
the water, we can measure, we can talk a little bit about the water that's going through the powerhouse, right? I mean, the water that's going over the edge, we'd have to go back and get the data, but.
So we are spilling.
So this
At
is
Rollins.
PG,
No, we're making releases out of Rollins to avoid spilling.
Okay,
Right?
so no
We're capitalizing
spillway, no
power.
spillway water.
There's no water going over this.
Got a bike ride out there, but no.
Yeah.
So it's a generation.
Yes.
So is this normal operation?
Yeah, we normally would operate to avoid spill. So if we can take it, if the water, if we didn't increase the generation, the water would spill out of Rollins.
So in years past, in a 70% precip, 58% snowpack year, what's PG&E's demand been So I don't know what that qualifies as a moderately dry or below average, you know. So there's a categorical year that we're defining, and PG&E calls for flow from generation typically. So we have historical.
And they're pulling it out of their bucket. So they're filling their 10,000 and they.
But it can go into a new reservoir. I'm just curious
Yes.
what they fill it.
Yeah,
So
100%.
what do you're saying it's their records?
It's their
We
water.
don't, all we know is the
We know the release.
monetary result of the generation, and that would fluctuate by market
So
reimbursement.
we know the volume of
That's
release.
what I'm getting at. So,
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
and in the years past, the typical,
Yeah.
typical, but would you just
It's
weren't
not-
prepared with that? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't prepared for that question.
I mean, that one December, we had spilled at Rollins during the drought, and we could have filled 110,000 acre-foot reservoir. Just one of these discussions that comes up. And so I was just curious, well, here's a normal operational thing, and that is a volume, because Combie can't hold it. It's always within 10 foot of spilling, because it's all deeper than the doggone lake is. And that's why I was going, so.
Yeah, we can calculate.
Next
how much
meeting,
water we release.
next meeting, bring that one as part of the, just out of curiosity.
For sure. So this slide may look familiar to you. We got very familiar with it during the drought in 2015. The curious thing this time around, though, is that we have escalated into the moderate drought stage. The good news is Southern California is exempt at this point in time, and so hopefully that buffers how fast the rest of the state changes. We'll have to wait and see. And again, this
exemption?
Southern California's had its normal rainfall.
What's
Yeah.
this?
So it's not in the drought.
they're not included in drought.
Not an issue, okay, so
Yeah,
excluded, not exempted.
They haven't been
Exempted
included.
was a funny word.
They were getting rain.
Excluded from this map because they're not,
They're not in a
They're
drought.
not in a drought condition.
this is a drought map.
They were getting rain in April or whatever it was when we weren't.
That's
Yeah.
correct, yeah. And you can see that the far reaches of Northern California are the worst.
And now-
Or they're shown as white per your legend.
That-
There is no drought, so they're just shown as a none.
That's
Is what,
correct.
okay, exempt sounded funny.
That whole thing was kind of an anomaly though, isn't it? That for more normal, it would be wet in the north and dry in the south.
Correct.
And so it's flipped.
It is
Yeah.
flipped, for sure.
It's only Chinatown. Jack Nicholson movie I watched again recently.
What, you used that term, it's flipped?
No,
No,
it's
no.
only China, it's
All
the
the
Metropolitan Water District,
Oh,
and, it's a
yeah.
murder
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
and this, it's a famous movie, or
Okay.
if you're in the water industry, I guess.
So this next slide here, or the last slide of water, is showing that the good news is our reservoir management team has been doing a great job, and we had gangbuster carryover from last year. We carried that into this year, and that in turn has helped put us at 105% of the 7-year average at 250,569 acre feet, which is 93% of total capacity. We did.
And last year was what type of a precipitation year?
Last year was very average.
Yeah,
Yes.
So we're still carrying from the year before that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
2017 was gangbusters, yes.
2017.
How does that, what kind of, back to the discussion, so if the state says we're now in this drought situation, and we don't get points for having water and storage in a drought situation, right, as far as our delivery.
Correct.
Well,
have to follow-
wherein you can show 4 years, now up to 5 years supply of deliverable urban water,
Yeah.
you can exempt yourself from some of the restrictions. It's an avenue, so the proper management is a good thing. But again, wet years, everybody doesn't draw
That
as
was a
much.
side comment.
Well, and what we found in past years during the last drought is that they put actions in place where we could no longer divert the water. They put a curtailment on water rights. The good news is, if we already have it in storage, it's generally not touched. It's ours to use. So that's the good news that we like to focus on. And the other thing is, we did anticipate this, as you remember from the previous WHO committee meeting. This is our forecast, and we remain right on track. And if this continues to hold true through the rest of the year, we're going to end the season with above average carryover, which is great.
Great.
On the water conservation, on the treated water side of the world, it's been rather curious. So we had a very dry and hot February, and you can see that reflected in the red line there that our customers used a bit more water in February and March, both, as compared to past years, more on par with the 2013 usage totals. But March turned wet, and then usage went right back down. So overall conservation to date is now 9% below the 2013 total, so we're back on track.
I brought this up to the Emergency Board of Directors meeting. The documentation of all this is, particularly with children not going to school, the toilet paper crisis, right? In defense of the supply buyers in every home, they have to increase their purchasing by 40%. So similarly, and then people not going to office buildings. So the bodily functions occur throughout the day. When everybody's home, then it's, you give them a 40% break just in the fact that everybody's home now. Kids are not at school and people are not at their office buildings for all that usage, water included. So it's funny year for all that.
For sure.
The shelter in place thing affects it.
So in summary,
As well as your outside, but I think there's some internal usage that definitely, it's been documented to be about a 40% increase.
and it seems to reflect in our numbers as well. So
Yeah.
it's tracking right along.
So not people's fault necessarily.
So in summary, the recent storms have given us a good late season boost. Precipitation remains below average and will finish out the year below average. Our long-term forecasting is showing just what I said, precipitation below average and temperatures to return to above average here very quickly. The snow survey was at 58% of average. However, our reservoir storage remains good at 105%. Our forecasted carryover is 176,000 acre feet, which is well above the average of 166,000 acre feet. Again, numbers support normal operations, but we will be running the system tight and preaching conservation.
You might put in a percentage versus the word well. It was like Sid trying to say what local is. I was trying to get a definition. You could just say it's 5% over. Because well can be interpreted any number of ways. It's a value judgment.
Chip, I was able to pull some numbers to calculate how much water we are moving through our Combie. So we have
On this generation.
on this generation, so we have 380 cubic feet a second coming through Combie South right now, and then 46 DFS of water spilling out of Combie North. So we've got about 426 DFS, so roughly 800 acre feet a day of water.
800 acre feet a day.
That we're,
And that's been representative of the first half of May?
that's been for about the last week and a half. We increased the draft, it's about a week now, so last Wednesday we ramped up, to that flow.
So, what was your number, 8?
So I'm right around 800 acre feet a day.
800? Acre feet?
Yeah.
Damn.
Right, Chip, I'm doing that math right, 426 times,
Awful.
it's a lot of water.
That's PG&E water.
And that's an operational where we could, everybody says you can never fill the
I
reservoir.
know where you're going, because we've had this conversation
Yeah.
before. It's PG&E water, they'll continue that through the spring as long as we have water.
We're gonna manage, we're gonna, as Chip mentioned, we're gonna watch this, we watch this every day to make sure that we're not wasting a drop, so.
But when she runs, it's got some volume.
Oh, yeah.
It's not 8,000 acre feet, it's
No,
800.
there's 800 per day.
Yeah, times 10, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I was,
Okay, yeah, so there's a significant amount of water
yeah.
that is released right now. But we'll watch that, and we watch that on a daily basis and maximize the storage. So these units will come offline. They are purely driven by when the water's available.
Sure. The PG&E aspect.
Yeah.
And on that quasi agenda item then, at the end of the day, PG&E, we're coming up on June. Is it all just gonna, it seems like they were forgiven their $200 million fine and da-da-da-da-da, so they're really not gonna, they're gonna come out of the bankruptcy without divestiture, is what it's looking like.
Correct.
So all that energy we were putting into it, they weren't looking to sell in the first place, perhaps. I mean,
That's the direction.
I'm trying to reinforce, not, okay. So that's where we're looking moving forward.
All right, operations activities report. Our distribution crews are
So I
putting
guess we would anticipate next year, the operations would be similar, because it would still be PG&E, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is this operational thing, really didn't change that much. Gavin Newsom's their friend.
Okay, operations activities report. Our distribution crews are actively putting the canals back together. We tore the system down in preparation for the storms, and rightfully so. We got a lot of rain. We had a few instances of overtopping, but it doesn't look like any major damages at this point. Aquatic applications are underway, trying to control the algae growth down in the lower countries. We are verifying purchases and adjustments per customer's request out in the irrigation system. We have a lot of folks jockeying their purchase allotments. Our cross-connection control team has installed new items at all full hookups at the campground. So anywhere where there's an RV hookup, we put in RP back to there. We're working on an update to the rules and regs, and that'll be coming to this committee in the very near future. Our treated water crews have produced 168 million gallons in March, 182 million gallons in April. We continue sampling. We sample for cryptosporidium. We have also increased sampling along the canal systems. With the whole shelter-at-home thing, we have witnessed a large number of folks walking the canal systems. We had some concerns for potential contamination, so we have increased sampling just to monitor that. And so far, nothing unusual has come out of it, so that's the good news. But we will continue to sample from here on out. We have removed the lime silo at Elizabeth George. We have also repaired the sludge collector there. And the Long Ravine filters have been installed at the Long Ravine campground, so we're prepping all the lower system campgrounds for the date and time in which they open. We don't have that hard date yet, but we'll be ready once it comes.
Go back to your distribution column, aquatics application, volatile subject for everybody, but, so that includes, copper and Roundup and these discussions?
This is just the applications in the canal water.
In the water,
Roundup
not,
does not go in the water.
okay. And, well, I wanted to jump to the, all these attorneys are all loading up because it's a civil case with all that. What is the state of California's mandate, dictate, regulation with regards to herbicides these days, specifically the glyphosate?
Illegal.
That's, so what is?
I haven't seen anything in the news.
Yeah, it's all just the civil cases, and attorneys always go for the money, but.
And it's all against Monsanto, against the owner.
So the state of California continues, we're a Prop 68 state.
Department of Pesticides is authorized the use of glyphosate and follow the manufacturer's recommendations. So,
And then similarly with, is it just copper? Copper sulfate? That we've always done? I know we've tried other things and they do or don't work, but so what is the state's?
these are both NSF 61, so they're allowed to be used in treated water supply. So these are, so these are
NF
61.
What is that?
NSF 61, National Food Health Safety.
Oh, national, beyond the state?
Yeah.
And then the state bows to their discretion? Or do we have a separate entity?
Well, generally, the state can add to government, so can the county.
So they couldn't erode it were the fence, but they could further make it. But there's been none of that.
None.
I know we keep, but on the other hand, we're dictated as a public agency.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our water resources team continues to work on our water rights. We have had good news from the state that they're now looking forward to working on our Loma Rica water rights and adding the powerhouse as another place of use, so that's great. Hopefully that tracks quickly. We're setting the measurement weirs along the canals and creeks, especially down in the Lake Wildwood area. We are working on our PG&E settlement now that the bankruptcy is close to being done and over. We are working on settling up our billings with PG&E.
With the outages?
Yes.
Those.
So
what type of stuff?
as we operate, we both share water back and forth, and there are fees for all of that. When I refer to settlements, it's settling up those bills between the two agencies.
Huh.
They also owe us some money for power generation.
What, with the generation, weren't we billing PG&E for the outages? And where does that come up? Under the public safety shutdowns, weren't we then firing up generators? And we had a whole billing scheme?
So we've got a claim against them.
Claim, that's not settlements, that's
Not
claims.
claims.
Okay. not here, this is a standard operating.
That's correct.
Okay, that, people love it. Sometimes these general terms, again, that's.
Well, and I'm abbreviating,
Yeah,
but I can fit as much as I can in there, so there's not a great description up there on the wall. So
Right, it's like, again, back to the word local,
Yeah.
what are you, I was trying to think, what do you mean? You know, what is local? Yeah.
So, and last topic there is the PG&E COA water allotment. Basically, every year they tell us,
Operating agreement.
Okay.
thank you, they tell us, how much water is available for purchase from them, and we have landed on that, it's above 30,000.
That's the 30,000 option that we all have every year during the drought?
So it's
Conceptual.
53,000 acre
That
feet
we entered
generated.
in a couple of years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's a dry year, they dropped it down to 30, but
That, when we did it, it's 53 in and out.
Total all in.
in a good year, yeah. Customer service folks have been very busy, although the lobby is closed, the phone calls have picked up. So we had very good timing on our online bill payment establishment. So far, we've had 6,113 folks utilize that option, which is great. We've had 1,634 folks sign up for paperless billing. So essentially, we're not sending them any paper anymore. It's great. Badger meter installations, we're at 8,224. That's,
Stagnant?
it is stagnant only because
Shelter in place.
the Badger meter folks cannot supply us with the correct endpoint. They have gone from AT&T to a Verizon endpoint at our request because the AT&T was not providing enough signal. They have now perfected the endpoint, but they have yet to ship it to us. They say it's on the way.
Our target is 15,000 or something?
Well, all in, it's 19,000.
19,000, yeah.
So we'll get there slowly. We have sent out notification for folks that were delinquent for over a year that some action may be necessary or those fees will go to the tax roll. And then again, I mentioned we're doing final season adjustments for the irrigation folks. Our electrical crews have retrofitted all our turbidity meters at our water treatment plants. They are updating all of our data loggers along our canals so that we can get current and up-to-date measurements back to the office. We have a point of, what is that? Point of sale, thank you. Point of sale system for our campground. They have been working on establishing the communications for the campground so that we can more accurately track and report back and forth to the campground. They played a pivotal role in that. They also helped establish the VPN and the internet connections here at the office to allow more folks to work from home during this COVID event. They replaced Hylas Pump 3 at the Lake of the Pines treatment plant. They're installing switchgear at the Anchor Lane DS Extension pumping station in preparation for any more PSPS events. And then lastly, they have installed a long ravine pressure system.
That was Diamond Well?
Oh, that,
Vendor? The long ravine pressure system was Diamond Well?
Diamond Well did the filtration.
Filtration on the same project?
Yes, yes.
Rem and I were talking wells, domestic wells.
Gotcha. So treated water accounts, so far this year we've added 14. Not a huge number, but kind of tracking with years past. New raw water sales in miners inches. Rather curious this year, it happened early, back in February. I think that's partly because we were able to open up to sales early, but
It was dry.
yeah, and it was dry, that's a great point. But regardless, we have added,
So they could be established customers taking more?
no, not yet, these
These
are
are new
new,
hookups.
these are brand new.
New hookups.
Yes, so 1,069 acre feet added this year. The existing customers, actually, as a whole, are cutting back, which is, it's very interesting.
Driven by cost.
Well, partly. If you look at the column on the right, you'll notice 2015 had very minimal sales. Well, that's because we were in a freeze. 2016, the freeze lifted, drought was over, we had a large amount of increases. I think folks since then have realized they really didn't need that much water. They're conserving, they're cutting back, and they're finding they don't need to purchase as much as they used to. And so the last 3 years, we've had reductions.
Well, I'm getting communications from raw water agricultural people, and it's the accumulative cost that they're facing that is getting to be
I mean, obviously, that plays a role in it as well.
thousands of dollars, and they need to.
Well, especially
Need to
if
be
they're buying water to bank it, you know,
If you're banking
if
inches,
you're banking inches on your account,
yeah.
and now it's gone up, now what do I do?
Now you're making serious, you're now being forced to choose.
Right.
We kind of kicked it around a few times.
Those committees up and running. We're waiting for COVID.
Oh, they haven't met yet.
They've met 3 times.
Oh, did they? Yeah. So something for next year, maybe?
No, we'll be done this year.
Well, season's already afoot.
Right, for rates for next year.
For next year, yeah.
So treated water outages, we have actually cut back. We had a lot more scheduled for the month of April, but given the pandemic and the COVID situation, we held back on shutting off waters as much as we could. If we had a leak, we went in, we put a repair band on it quickly and turned the water back on. Major outages.
You need to go down to WA.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
Major outages will be picking up now, again this month, so we're gonna start on normal operation. Emergency treated water outages, we had 2 in the month of April, 1 in March. Scheduled raw water outages, again, we're now into the irrigation season, they're gonna be nil. We only do them if it's an absolute necessity from here on out.
So your culverts in the off-season, huh?
Yes, sir, you got it. That's what most of those off-season outages reflect. And then emergency raw water outages, we've had none. That's great news. We didn't have any in 2019. Hopefully, we'll continue with none in 2020. Last but not least, here's our customer communication. So our dispatcher desk received 2,345. That's actually flipped from how it normally is. We had more calls into our dispatching desk than our customer service desk this month. And that's a reflection of the start of irrigation season. We tend to get a lot of calls into that desk as we start the season off. All told, customer service and dispatch, we had 4,449 calls into the office for the month. We had 188 emails. That seems to be picking up as well with the current pandemic and people working from home and whatnot. Email communication is picking up, which actually is good. Apologize for January, February, March. The IT section of calculating this report was unfunctional, and now that our IT staff is getting back up to speed, they're able to fix the issue for me. So from here on out, we should have good numbers. And with that, concludes my report.
Good, thanks, Chip.
You're welcome. Move on.
Jumping straight into you.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk through the hydroelectric department update. So first, in terms of April outages, overall we had a pretty good year, or pretty good month. We had some issues out of Bowman, as you recall. We had a pretty heavy snowstorm roll in that first week of April, and that knocked us offline for a while and took us a while to get back on. The blizzard conditions, it took them 2 days to cut the road into there to actually get in there with the snowcat. So experimental work.
Cost per hour, 84 hours at? Is anything assessed?
Don't have that number handy. We haven't finalized the invoice yet with PG&E, so there is some negotiation going on there.
They get to to penalize us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we were unavailable. The powerhouse tripped offline and we were unavailable. So.
And do they know it, or is it honor system?
Both.
So that's why you talk to them and.
We negotiate, every month is a negotiation to the minute, of when this thing went offline, when it came
Could
back
they have
on.
even taken it because of the same storm?
Yep, and that's important here. So these 60 kV line relays were on our side of the transmission line. If you look down to Rollins, that 60 kV line relay was on their side, so we were paid through that line relay. So it's
35 versus 100, yeah.
Well, but it's a whole lot larger unit, right? So the Rollins unit makes significantly more than the Bowman unit.
Oh, so that calculates in.
Yep. So then the Chicago Park, we did some testing on the excitation system there. I'll talk about that a little bit later in my report. We still have planned outage hours left for Chicago Park and Dutch Flat, so all the outages you're seeing there are paid. So they're just more informational. We have a certain allotment of outage hours that we get to use every year. As long as we plan for them, give PG&E notification, we can use them. So everything you're seeing there is planned, and that large outage is Dutch
flat is, water saved means essentially we didn't have any water to generate. So we turned the plant off at PG&E's direction. It was available, so we are paid through that entire time. So, we're still building our key performance indicators table here. You can see that our weekly dam inspections were down over the winter. I would expect that we can't get to all of those upper division lakes. So we did not make all of our weekly dam inspections. Again, the requirement is a monthly inspection, and we made all of our monthly inspections, so we're well within our requirements. The goal is a higher standard than that, so regulatorily, we're all right. Inspecting our linear facilities, this is flumes, this is the transmission line, this is the South Yuba Canal. We've rolled into this number now. Again, during the winter, this is very difficult to access these places, and so we don't, so our patrolling was down. But I think we're still well within what I would expect as a normal number, and we'll see how this develops over the years, and these metrics become a bit more meaningful.
2022 I thought that was our color. I see 2020 is attached to the other one. Okay.
We can work on that a little bit. I can see there is those colors are an awful lot alike.
Doing the same thing with 20 and 21 and 2019, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll work on that.
These are all historical ones.
Historical numbers, yep. We're still doing well on our daily powerhouse inspections. I think that's really the key. We do like to be into the powerhouses nearly every day, Bowman Powerhouse being the exception. We don't always get out there.
And there it's more distinct. There it's almost a red versus yellow. It's just here they start to blend together, the two colors on your legend.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Red is under the light, so.
Maybe it's just the projection of it.
Yeah.
Reaching the light. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but so we are making our powerhouse inspections, and I think that's really key. That's how you make sure that these things stay alive. As you're in there every day, you're listening to the noises and smelling the smells, and so we're doing a good job there. In terms of the maintenance side of the house, as I mentioned, we had a couple of problems getting Bowman restarted, and that outage that you saw was delayed for a number of reasons. When we went out there to start it again, we had an overspeed issue, which essentially means the unit starts running away from you. It was an act of Congress to get everybody out there, right? This is the time that we were dealing with COVID. We weren't having two people ride in the same vehicle at the same time. So at one point, I believe we had 2 snowcats, 2 side-by-sides with tracks, and a snowmobile out of Bowman to get the appropriate people out there. And that's after cutting the road into Bowman, which took nearly an entire day to get even a snowcat back in there. So that first storm was a tremendous amount of work. Driven largely by the insurance requirements, we are going through and sampling all of our transformers. It's routine that we go through and sample the oil and we look for any degradation, but the insurance, as part of the new quotes that they're providing us, they've said we want to see what condition those transformers are in today. So we've gone out and collected oil samples for that. We've been really focused on getting ready for the next round of PSPS. We all know it's coming. And especially at Chicago Park and the Dutch Flat Powerhouse, this is the excitation issue. We have really tuned the exciters out there, so our goal is essentially that when PG&E shuts off the power, our units continue to rotate and generate for themselves. They just sit there and wait for PG&E to come back on. As soon as PG&E closes back in, we can come back on the grid and be ready to go. We're having a little bit of trouble at Chicago Park more than Dutch Flat. The second you pull the support and the resistance that the grid provides to the unit, the second you pull those off, those units just want to speed up and run away, and you can't allow that. So you have to throttle back down quickly. We're having some issues with Chicago Park and Dutch Flat doing that. We were successful at Dutch Flat. The power went 2 nights ago, a night or 2 ago, the power went off locally for an hour or so. Dutch Flat rode that through. It sat there, disconnected itself, went down to an idle. The second PG&E came back on, it reparalleled itself and went back to work. Chicago Park was unable to ride through that outage, so we'll continue to work there and figure out how to best do that. But we may be at the limitations of the equipment at this point. It's
old technology.
It's old technology. The governor's 50, 60 years old. We may be chasing diminishing returns at this point, and we've got a little bit more work we want to do that before I can say that confidently, but I think at lower loads, so if we're anywhere below half of our generation capability, then the units will disconnect and just sit there and wait. Once we start running a lot harder.
We're made to work, right?
The guys did tremendous work on this, getting this together, and this is a big step. What else we've been working on? We've been doing a lot of road work and just our other heavy sort of civil sort of work, doing some riprap work. This is the time of the year to get everything prepped. We're kind of stuck down in the lower division, so we're making sure the roads are all in good shape. We've also been doing a tremendous amount of brushing and tree cleanup. Again, clearing just to make sure we have all of our defensible space. Hopefully we'll have some pictures of that next month. And then we're, one of our major capital projects this year is the balance of plant controller at the Dutch Flat Powerhouse. We've been doing a lot of the fabrication work there. This is where we'll be bringing in additional instrumentation and monitoring, so we can see what's going on with the vibration out there. So that's a big step. We've also been working on replacing the cameras at the Rawlins Powerhouse. NERC issued an alert that said if you have camera systems and any part of that system is manufactured by a Chinese manufacturer, you can pull that out. So we are replacing some of our cameras at the Rawlins Powerhouse. Fortunately, that's the only place that we had the cameras that were identified, so they will be from a different manufacturer at this point. Doing a lot of wiring work at the Combie North Powerhouse. We've had ongoing problems there with the capacitor banks, and I think we finally got that dealt with. We've got a slide or two here later to talk about what's been going on at Combie South, but we have purchased a new transformer out there. That's a small pad-mounted transformer like you see at a grocery store or something along those sidelines. Finally approved that. That'll be in October. It'll be delivered to us, and then we'll work to get that installed. The pandemic has been good for several projects. We can send our guys out and work remotely. We've identified all the costs and locations for card reader installations, so we can secure the facilities a bit better. You'll have to scan in with your card, and then it'll know that you're there. It'll improve our alarming. And then we've just been doing SCADA firmware upgrades. We had our annual outage at the Combie North Powerhouse, which was fortunately very simple. And then we've installed a brush dust vacuum system at the Dutch Flat Powerhouse. So as the generator's rotating and the brushes sit against the rings there, there's a certain amount of dust that comes off those brushes. We're talking big brushes. That dust falls down onto the generator and has a negative impact on the performance of the generator. So we've worked with a company to develop and install this system that vacuums the dust off of the brushes as it falls down.
Magnetic material brushes, kind of?
These are carbon, what are these? They're not magnetic.
Like the old starter motor concept?
Yeah.
This is what you're saying?
Yes. It's actually a vacuum cleaner sort of vacuum that sucks that dust in. We expect that it will improve our generator performance, and it will significantly reduce our annual outage maintenance time, because we won't have to clean it.
To clean that stuff out.
Every year you get in there, and this is where you send the new guys, right? They get in there and they put on their Tyvek suits and they just wipe everything down, every individual coil, and that takes a significant amount of time.
So why, my question is, why just at the Dutch Flat Power?
It's a pilot. We've got the same system lined up.
Check a year later, make sure it really did what
Make sure we're getting our money's worth. Rollins will probably install a similar system there. Assuming everything's working fine, we'll start expanding it. We're not leading edge on this by any stretch of the imagination, but this is not a commonly done thing. I know that the vendor's very excited in the way this thing performs, because they want to use us as their test case to show us off a little bit. So we're
good qualifier, because that bleeding edge is exactly that on some of this stuff.
Yes, and we are not there. This is YWA has installed kind of a homegrown system on theirs. We've gone a bit, the next step, we actually have a vacuum that goes around the brushes, so it should catch everything. So this is good stuff. We also, as folks tried to get out of their houses and stay socially distanced, we had a tremendous uptick in the OHV usage out at the Dutch Flat Forebay. The sheriff was out there the first weekend and said, hey, look, this is private land, these are public county roads, you can't ride here. gave a whole bunch of warnings and said, I'm gonna come back next week and write tickets. It's my understanding that the public heard that and didn't come back the next weekend, but, we also, did what we could to support their efforts out there and move some of our existing K-rails and the big white barricades that block off roads out there, it appears that we were successful. On the admin side, we've been pushing hard on our CMMS workflow review. We should be rolling that out. I know we're going to give an update to the APC committee here next month, but that's coming along, and I'm excited to get that moving. We had a whole bunch of NERC updating and reporting. Fortunately, there wasn't much to report. In working with NCPA on our Combie South powerhouse, we've kind of perfected a system to report to the CalISO more effectively than the existing T1 line. That's our comm line, the communication line that comes out of the powerhouse there. We're going to try and get rid of that T1 line. It's unreliable and extremely expensive. We're paying hundreds of dollars a month to have that line down there, and we think we can replace it with a cellular connection that will work just as well. And I think we've perfected that at Combie South. We also have some projects that are coming through the engineering group on French Lake Dam and in Jackson Lake Spillway. And then we pushed through a significant purchase order for the balance plant upgrades project. I'm a bit worried about that purchase. A lot of our suppliers are seeing delays due to the COVID issue, and so we're going to have to monitor that closely to make sure that we can actually get those parts in time to install them. And then in closing, I'd like to talk a little bit about Combie South. I think next month I'd like to bring this back to the committee to talk a bit more in detail. We need to do it in closed session because if there's
Shopping a contract on this?
So this is the new contract. Our PPA with PG&E ended on May 1st. We are now fully on board with NCPA and are using that unit to maximize market value out there.
We're sending it to Lodi or something?
Yes.
This is that?
Yes, this is that contract. And what you can see is we're now actively participating in the energy market. This graph over here on the right-hand side is the average day-ahead locational marginal price that we're selling the power at. So you can see that the power ranges from anywhere between $0, meaning if you're generating, you're getting paid $0 for it, up to 50 some odd dollars in a given hour.
What's the marginal part of it? Why do they put marginal in there?
So there's a
profit margin?
There are a whole bunch of, there's transmission congestion that goes into this. There are environmental reps that you can sell out of this. So this is just
kind of like we did when we compared the contracts.
Yeah.
But the term marginal just seems funny. What LMP?
I don't know.
The way it is.
That's how CalISO defines it. So we are really developing our generation strategy to maximize hitting, obviously, if you can hit these hours of the day on the right, so the evening hours, the sun sets, solar goes offline, that's when power prices go up, and avoid any of these hours that we can. And you can see here on Sunday, if you're generating during the day on Sunday in this particular week, you're almost just giving your power away. There's very little value to the energy that's generated at that point. We're still generating revenue through the sale of the renewable energy credits. We're still generating the resource adequacy, but power is worth almost nothing. It's worth, there were a couple of days where it ran $2 or $3 an hour that you could sell for. It's nothing.
So now on this unit, you're making those decisions, not PG&E.
We're working with NCPA, right? So they've got a group and they've developed a model, and this is what I can talk about next week, and we can show you a whole lot more detail in closed session.
Generation strategy.
Yep, we have worked with them to develop a strategy, and you'll be able to see where there are days when we fill Combie Reservoir, put that water in storage, because we see that, you know what, the weather on Friday is going to be hot. We're going to want to be able to run hard all day on Friday, so we'll fill up water in the reservoir Wednesday and Thursday and run full bore all day Friday.
And if you had a reservoir between there and Rollins, would that enhance that?
I would love to play with some generation.
It would be, and That's what I keep saying, it's an operational.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's been a tremendous amount of work to get us to this point. The Cal ISO has been all over us. It came down to the wire on April 30th where they said, we're not going to allow you to generate on May 1st. And we said, we're generating today, what changes? And they said, well, we need a whole stack of testing. And we said, this is ridiculous. It got to the point where we were, I sent Rem the message that said, I need you to be able to drive to Folsom this afternoon so we can have a conversation. Fortunately, we didn't get there, but.
So this is because we're outside of PG&E's jurisdiction, now we're the independent guarantor.
As we're transitioning, yep. So we were prepared to have a meeting with the GM, with NCPA, with REM, and then whoever at Cal ISO we needed to talk to convince them that this is a paper transaction.
Okay.
Nothing was changed with the unit. But the folks out there have just been working like crazy to get this done.
So did that meeting then resolve itself?
It didn't happen. We were
Okay.
Fortunately, I've been working with the AGM down at NCPA, and we were able to.
People were able to communicate.
Cooler heads finally prevailed. But it was touch and go. It was a challenge.
Bit of a male dog marking action, people marking their spots, yeah.
Yes.
Authorities and whatnot, yeah.
Yeah, so tremendous amount of documentation that went into that. Our compliance group has just been spinning, trying to make sure that we dot all the i's and cross all the t's, and it boggles my mind how much the rules change on a day-to-day basis with some of this sort of stuff. And so, but we were able to navigate it. We generated on May 1, made some money. Like I said, I'd like to, in our next meeting, bring in some of the results of what we're making, how we're doing it, how we're maximizing our generation strategy, and just kind of talk that through with you so you're up to speed on what we're doing to maximize the revenue out there. And then with that concludes my report.
That's it, and
Thank you, Ken.
so that closes item 5, and we're just about to wrap, but I'd like one clarification, if I could, for item 2, the Combie South Access Road. The direction was that we were going to proceed with Route 2, but we were going to perform a site visit as well.
Well, you've been out there?
No,
Oh, you haven't been out there then?
oh, I was just on the committee last year when this all came up.
I see.
So that's why.
If we do it as a group, that's fine, I'd just be curious, understanding the lady's concern, I just gotta have a view of that one time
Yeah,
anyway.
absolutely. I just wanted to confirm that's the direction we're headed, and it sounds like.
But then based on that later fellow's discussion, yeah, maybe this is, and so I give it support.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Picture is always good.
Yeah.
Yes.
What the heck?
So with that, then, we will close the WHO committee. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris, for all the help.
You're welcome.